Welcome. I've made my tribute to the music god, so now I'm free to talk to you. Uh, so how you been? How's life? Um, Today I'm going to talk about, am I too loud or too quiet? Uh, Maybe you're perfectly balanced, or at least most of the time you're perfectly balanced there. But the question is to focus on what is the benefit. Like, there's a benefit to kind of expressing your voice, and there's a benefit to expressing your silence or quietness. And what's that thing like? The book of Ecclesiastes or something. Like, to everything there is a time. No, to everything there is a season and a time for every purpose under heaven. Like, which is that incredible song. Um, the what is it? The Birds do an incredible version of that "Turn, Turn, Turn" song. If you're looking for some good music, incorporating those words, but very beautiful. But yeah, like basically, I think I want to talk about what are the benefits of um, expressing your opinion, and what are the benefits of not expressing your opinion. So, okay, first of all, let's say with suppose let's say just with let's go start big with society, like telling other people what you think. I think it's good. It allows people to know who you are, so then they can kind of not only learn from you and whatever you have to share, but also they can give you feedback so you can learn. They can respond to your opinions and say, "Hey, that's not okay," or "Oh, I know what you mean, but I used to think that way, but actually I changed my mind because of blah blah blah." Or "Yeah, you're almost exactly right, but I'll change one little detail." Or just, "Yeah, you're totally right. Wow, good point." You know, um, and or, "Oh, good points. Yeah, what do you think about this other kind of related question?" Or, "That brings up this question. What do you think about it?" So giving your opinion, whether it's something really profound and like philosophical, or it's just something really simple about like, "Oh, what kind of food should we have at the party?" Um, Giving your opinion can help other people and you. We can learn together. Um, Also, part that can connect to bigger things like political and even kind of existential matters, even spiritual in a way of, the triumph of love over, say, ignorance, in the around the planet. I think recently, from my point of view, I would say a lot of people were too quiet and didn't, including myself, and were afraid of expressing our opinions for fear of being ridiculed and called a conspiracy theorist or an anti-vaxxer or a Russian propagandist or whatever, Bernie bro, Trump, this, that, whatever. There's all these, or racist, misogynist, sexist. There's genuine people who are actually supremacists and believe, and that's a problem. But uh, in my opinion, all supremacists are second-class citizens. Just kidding. Get it? But there's genuine bad people, but then there's often people get besmirched and smeared with these terms, and then that encourages people to kind of just shut up and not express their opinion. But then you have these, like, according to Victor, I think Alexander Solzhenitsyn in the Gulag Archipelago is apparently kind of saying, which I haven't read, but apparently part of the punchline is that it was all the lies that all the Russian people had made together, or the Soviet Union, that lying on a daily basis, and that these small acts of moral cowardice were directly responsible for the catastrophe of, like, the chains of prison camps and gulags and all that, and that the key to the redemption was just honesty, and truth, and cleaving to truth within yourself, I guess, at least, but also telling people, and not lying. And apparently, yeah, I don't know. I think it makes a lot of sense that when people don't talk about issues, then the there's not the public conversation, and then certain terrible ideas can kind of go around masquerading as reasonable ideas because they haven't been criticized enough. And if you think about a really good idea, like let's say children, um, we should try to maximize the education of children. If children, you know, certain basic level should be encouraged, but beyond that, like, oh, what are you interested in, and what are you maybe capable of, and what do you think in your context of time and space um, might be able to provide you a livelihood, and then you can kind of have your own family and have your own children and repeat the process beautifully. Uh, okay, so what, you know, whatever that particular specifics are, then on top of the basic kind of general education, being, okay, we'll give you focus on that and help expand your opportunities. So maximizing the education of children. I think everyone think, yeah, that's a totally good idea. You don't need a misinformation board and censorship to prevent people saying children shouldn't be educated, because it's just it's such a good idea. It's so foundationally just clear and obvious that no one can compete with it in the open marketplace of ideas. And anyone who tries to, they're kind of just outing themselves as a fool, basically. And that should be the same with all things. If it really is true, then it doesn't need censorship to protect it. The truth needs no defense. The truth is logically coherent and internally consistent, and so it's just recognizable because all that which is not true, in an intense enough, long enough, comprehensive enough, broad enough, like public debate, and everyone loves to, be right. So don't have to worry about having enough voices. It's just a matter of a willingness just to let people, to invite people to that conversation, and not get emotionally overloaded, and be able to remain civil and listen to each other. So long as you got that, conversation flowing, the all that which is not true will be revealed by its internal contradictions, and its being out of step with nature and harmony. And so, yeah, basically, so I think we should all express our voices in terms of like big issues that affect us and that affect our communities, and then even if you're afraid, oh, this is going to cause me problems, I think, yeah, that's a hard one. Maybe sometimes, say you're in some country and it's just everyone's totally against this particular thing, even though you think it's a good idea, then sharing your voice, it might be part of a long-term change, but in the more immediate term, it could cause big problems for your family and your children. And so you might decide that, no, for practical reasons, I'm going to just protect my family and bring love and goodness to that little part of the universe, rather than to the society or the world at large. And I think that's fair enough, but we need to be aware that if too many people start doing that, it causes bad systems to become consolidated. And often the only reason why that 99% of the people don't agree with that idea is because they've been kind of hoodwinked into it, because not enough people, maybe a generation before, were open and honest enough about what they really wanted. So I think there's a tension there, and it's, I think, there's no one size fits all thing, with certain red lines where if you cross that, like, hey, you can't just force people to take medical procedures, for example. That would be a red line. Their bodily integrity is a thing. So right, so it's kind of political stuff, sharing your voice, yeah, and so not sharing your voice, if to protect, sometimes that might be wise. Protect yourself, protect those you love, but it comes at a cost of potentially limiting long-term the realization of what you want. So, and then some Turkish proverb apparently, if you would tell truth, have one foot in the stirrup, like, ready to ride off. Um, so now, what about then in like more like social, more close social circles with your, let's say, your friends and your colleagues, um, and maybe your family? I think maybe like colleagues, in terms of intimacy to you, right? Be colleagues furthest out, and then and just general associates, and then a bit closer friends, a bit closer family, and maybe like a romantic partner, maybe closest there, um, or yeah, and then maybe your own soul a bit closer than that, and maybe God's privy to these conversations, perhaps. Um, but yeah, so I think again, like sometimes there's like this interesting thing of when to give your opinion. Like maybe say some colleague of mine says something and I think that's not true. I'm not sure, or like family member or whatever, or you know, whatever, like anyone, um, if they say something and I think it's not true, part of me wants to help them and correct them. Go, well, look, I don't know if I'm right. I think I'm right, but and if I don't know, I'll say, hey, like I'm not really sure about this, but apparently some people say this. Just so you know, this is a possibility. I don't know if it's true. Um, but then other times I think, no, I'm basically certain of this. And usually I want to tell people what I think to help them, um, and or they can help me and correct me. You know, like I believe in truth and that open flow of speech, and you know, and the word, the healing power of the word, and sharing our voices. But then sometimes you need to wonder, is it necessary? There's something like, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? As a test for when you should talk or say things, which is pretty profound, I think. And sometimes I might realize, oh, actually, you know, hey, the way of grace, I'll just let that go. I don't need to correct this person. The truth needs no defense, something Eckhart Tolle said. Like, you know, you don't need to be correcting people. But then I would be thinking, oh, you know, but then isn't that like a small ripple of falsehood going through the universe? Couldn't I correct that? And maybe the butterfly effect, if 1,000 other people are doing this, it kind of helps our society evolve towards truth. And it's a tricky thing, but I think there's a balance. Like there's other ripples. There are ripples of grace that come from allowing things to be and just surrendering and not needing to control. And when you're letting other people say things which you think are wrong, if it's not particularly important, then just letting that go, that can be a good practice for you. You're developing your ability to surrender and to kind of take people as they are, and then that could be crucial. Like, you know, doing if you start doing that more, say you don't do that at all. Say you start doing that, you know, let's say 56 days later, there might be some really intense conversation with your romantic partner where, because you've been practicing kind of letting go in that way, you're able to let go of some, you know, there's some unfair accusation or something, but instead of just getting reactive and going, hey, that's not true, you're crazy, and then it escalating, that person in a hypothetical situation might be able to just take a breath and go, I see what you mean, or just, is that so, you know, or whatever, right? Or you think, you know, instead of being like, you're wrong, you know, and something tiny like that could, you know, have a big effect down the road. So, but yes, also there's the butterfly effect of truth and pointing out contradictions, and yeah, so that's something I wrestle with sometimes, like when to step in. Like say over all the COVID stuff, I from pretty early on was feeling like this is a mass psychosis, and this is a bunch of people, well-meaning people, making terrible mistakes because certain other people are trying to make a bunch of money, and certain other people are trying to monopolize power as well. And how deep they were into the causation of that crisis. Did they create it? Did they manipulate it from deep, you know, very close to the heart of the movement? Or were they just on the fringes? I don't know. But something very fishy was going on, right? but I didn't mention it at all, I think, to my colleagues for most of that time. Um, I don't know, I just like felt kind of leaning towards that way of grace and just letting things be. But in hindsight, I wonder if maybe, you know, I should have, um, in order to, the spirit of like respecting their intelligence, saying, hey, what do you think about this, and not, being like, oh, I'll just let you have, your crazy belief. Like, no, I really think that's totally wrong. Don't I have an obligation to kind of help bring that to your attention, and we can either, talk about it. And maybe if we disagree, then fine, but at least I know the information or the claim that is out there. But and then there was probably some element of fear for maintaining my livelihood and not wanting to be like outcast as, oh, this guy's crazy. All right, oh, maybe we don't want to give him the extra hours, or maybe if things go in a bad direction and we need to let someone go, maybe the guy who's not quite in sync with the team culture is the one to go. So I think, and that probably happens a lot, and people with more to lose, probably have more responsibilities and maybe big family, and maybe they have a well-paying job, so they've got this really kind of quite expensive lifestyle. So therefore, it's like maybe harder to manage if that job was removed. You could see why people would fearfully not share their voice to protect that. And then that, again, that's tricky, like balancing taking care of your family with the integrity of your soul and the integrity of your culture and your planet, by having enough honest conversations so that information can flow around and that there's a critical mass. You need like a solid minority of people to really know what's going on. Otherwise, things seem to spiral out of control. And you have that thing, what's that, mass formation, which that Belgian psychologist dude, can't remember his name, talks about, where, you kind of have like a low, serious level of anxiety in the community, low level or, a hum of anxiety. And then there's, maybe you're saying kind of just anxiety in general, I forget. But, but no specific cause. And then, if I'm not mistaken, there's some level of unease, and then a problem emerges and makes everyone hysterical, and then a very narrow solution is proposed as the only solution, and everyone falls into lockstep to basically force people to do that. And allegedly, this is connected to the world wars, that they kind of these sorts of things happening, and allegedly it kind of happens due to increasing atomization in societies where people are less connected socially, and it's more mechanized connections and larger scale systems due to the broader reach that mechanization and technology allows, where you can have trains and aeroplanes and telephones and all these things connecting groups, instead of face to face talking, but that was where you could have, I think the numbers were 30%. Kind of, I don't remember if he was saying just for the COVID thing, Matthias something, was that his name? But that often I think you'd have 30% or so of the society like in lockstep, ideologically zealous, 30% kind of against it, and then that 40% swayed by whichever is louder, basically, and that it is a question of voice, and amplifying that voice enough to get that 40% in the middle to kind of align with whatever makes more sense. But that you could see how even a small number of people remaining quiet could cause a very big problem, where those people on the fence who are kind of, it's not really their thing to think about things in detail, like they're not really interested, then in that kind of more abstract or systemic stuff, they're more interested in their story and their life and what they're up to, and fair enough. Then, or people who are just busy or whatever, then, they could be swayed. So I think, that would be, that's obviously very important to give your voice in that case. But with other things, like, is this band terrible or not? If someone's like, oh, they suck, I think just if I love them, I don't have to, feel like it's my. I think some people or everyone, until you realize what's going on, has this, and then you can stop it, has this tendency to treat ideas like they're part of us, like they're part of ourself. We identify with them. So if you say, "Oh, Bob Dylan's like he's a terrible singer," then I'll be like, "That's not true." Like some of, maybe these days, sometimes his voice is unpredictable. Like, get better or worse. I've seen some gigs where at the start he was pretty terrible singing, but then by the end he had gotten good. But still it wasn't the best. But then recently he's gone better. Whatever. But back in the day, he's for like decades, incredible voice, and even now, yeah, like a lot of his last album, really beautiful singing. So I could have the opinion that no, he hits the notes. He's a very interesting voice. He has many different versions of it, which he does, rather masterful, and it conveys a lot of authentic energy. And but if someone's like, oh, he's got a bad voice, do I really need to correct them? It's like, well, no. And like maybe it's probably good to practice doing both. Make sure you're able to do both. So practice both, just in case the time comes when you should do one and not the other, that you'll actually be willing to do it. So being like correcting someone that you clearly know nothing about the subject, or being a bit more relaxed, being like, you think so? I think he's got a great voice. And just leaving it at that. You don't need to explain. If they ask, then okay, you can tell them more. Or just letting it go and just having a little twinkle in the eye of like, feels quite nice to just let people do that and not feel like you need to defend your territory and be like, oh, that's not true. Or if I'm a Democrat and someone's being like, Democrats are all evil, I don't have to get like, hey, I'm not evil, how dare you? You can just say, hey, well, or I guess that's more of an identity badge itself, but like ideas, when people criticize things that you agree with, I think it's good practice to be able to, if you're going to reply to them, to do it without a sense of defensiveness, but just a sense of like helpfulness, like, well, actually, that's not really true. Because if you're talking, it's because you're trying to help, right? If you're not talking, it shouldn't be because out of defensiveness and a fear and wanting to fit in or something or not be criticized or uncomfortable, but it should be out of a sense of helpfulness. Like, yeah, well, I'm helping you and I'm helping myself and the world by going with the way of grace this time and just letting it go, letting it flow. Passive or active, I guess you could say. But yeah, so, and then I guess as you get closer, like your family, your romantic partner, but even with your friends to some extent, I think there's a certain responsibility that comes in to help each other and to guide each other. And part of what we're doing with our friends is certain parts of me and certain parts of you overlap. And then we're able to share them with each other and connect on some level. And then me and some other friend, a different part of me and a different some part of them overlap. And maybe these two friends who I've just mentioned, when they interact, it could be two totally other parts of their personality which overlap that I share nothing with, really. They could be into football, and that's how they connect, Or, part of what overlaps with person A could also be part of what overlaps with my other friend, person B. But it's not all the same, and there's this unique chemistry you have, and it's good I love, spending a bit of time just with friends on their own, and then with groups of them, different combinations in groups, and you get a different chemistry, a different color from these mixes of the color of our personalities. And then you have a big party, and there's just people milling around the house or going to the back garden, moving around, and you can just float around and go between them, and there's just this kaleidoscope of different personalities, kind of coalescing and cascading about the place, while some other things cascade too. And but I think, and then part of that, which is interesting, it's not just like what we love. Shout out to Natalia, who I was just talking to recently about friendship and what like we really love about our friends, but how it's not just that like we love the parts of our friends that we can resonate with. Oh, you're really cool, you're like me in this way. But it's also we love who we are when we're around our friends. and that part of ourselves is only accessible really in that extreme form when we are around the friend, because their gravity is drawing it forth. You can access it on your own as well, but it's really more vividly drawn out by the friendship when you're in the presence of that friend. And so it's kind of like when you haven't seen a friend for a long time, it's also like you haven't seen that part of yourself in a long time. It's quite funny. And so the more friends you have and the greater variety of friends you have, the more intimately you know yourself, therefore. And then the more you can develop yourself, and then the better friend you can be to the next person who comes along. Yeah. So, and in that way, you got to be authentic. You got to share your authentic voice, I think, and that's the only way that this really works. Real friendship requires absolute authenticity. Sometimes, now here's interesting. Sometimes it's okay, I think, to keep things from your friends or from your family or even your romantic partner. Certain things could just be like the absolute chaos of the unconscious mind and just ancestral trauma and weird thoughts and just wacky stuff that's just, it's not from you, it's just from the collective consciousness of humanity, and even just the planet and the universe. Just mad whack, thoughts and feelings just sliding down the river. You don't need to share all of that, I think. It's good to be able to share some of it and be like, hey, I just had this crazy thought, but also to be able to be selective and be like, oh, yeah, say I noticed some reactive, stupid thought when I'm talking to my brother. I don't have to be like, hey, full disclosure, I just had this idea of whacking you over the head with like a shovel or something, it's not necessary. I'm just amplifying that voice, the voice of some random programming from, of ancestral trauma from, fight or flight, reptilian brain dealing with predation for the millennia. It's like, no, I can just let that go and kind of curate my mind and what I share and try to share something that aligns with my soul and my vision and the person I am and the person I want to be. And the person I am, okay, so there's your mind, it's kind of expression of you, but the deeper sense just being the soul, the you that is watching the thoughts and indeed is able to be there when there are no thoughts, say during very focused meditation when thoughts all disappear if you do it focused enough. Although most people don't do it at that level, and that's fine. It's very helpful even when you're just creating some space around the thoughts and there's still thoughts there. They'll probably slow down a bit, but they won't go away. But you can make them go away if you focus enough. But anyway, the you who's behind all of that, the soul, the consciousness, whatever you want to call it, there's no real name for it. It just is what it is. It was here before names existed. And it'll be here after names, maybe. Who knows? But so sharing the parts of yourself that kind of, they're in alignment with who you are and what you want. And you don't want to be too manipulative with that. I guess you want to keep in mind harmony and like what's good for the other person. And so say sometimes maybe, it's good for me, I can stay calm and chill. I've had a hard day at work and I want to stay calm and chill, but I forgot to do something. Oh, do I admit that to my romantic partner, or am I going to just try to hope, she doesn't remember? It's like, there's these weird little dilemmas that pop up. You'd be like, well, because if I mention it, I don't know, maybe she'll get reactive and her lower self will take over. I want to talk to her soul, her higher self. I don't want to be drawing out all this nonsense. And so sometimes that's actually wise, and to be like, I don't like, I don't like the food this person's cooked or something. You'd be like, do I need to mention that? Maybe sometimes, and they can learn, or other times just go with it and it's fine. In order to allow, I think there's so many variables, but it's just that flexibility is required just to see what allows us to have a good connection and a good experience right now and kind of flowing forwards. But yeah, so, and say, I think one interesting thing with like men perhaps is something, it seems to be true to me, and I've read this about, men and women, or you could say masculine and feminine people, but it does kind of stack up largely biologically, like most men are masculine, most women are feminine. but that, and there is such a thing as like testosterone in utero. I think when the baby's in the womb, male babies, the testosterone is released, and it does something to the physical structure of the brain. So there are certain changes early on, which, and then I think later during adolescence, I think, like again, these sorts of things go on. But anyway, so men apparently in general, I think more like kind of logically or like literally, you could say, whereas women in general are thinking more along the lines of social dynamics and empathy and emotion. And obviously, I'm not a woman, so I don't know. But it seems to be true to some extent, to a significant extent. And it's very interesting, I think, for peace between the sexes. Like, it's necessary to kind of have, for women to kind of be aware of, like, okay, men are literally further along the autistic spectrum than women, like towards like literalness and, less social awareness. As far as I understand it, that's actually the case. And, it's not like men are autistic, in general, but it's like it is closer along, or women are further from the autism spectrum than men, in general. And so, oh, does this dress look good on me? Oh, no, I don't like it. Well, that might be fine if she's, having a great time and laughing. You're like, no, like, really? Okay, fine. But then if she was having a terrible day and feeling, and maybe to her it wouldn't matter, does the dress objectively look good or not? It's, do you care about me enough to try to make me feel good by saying, oh, it looks wonderful, and not caring that maybe it's not perfectly to your tastes, but focusing more on the emotion. And so, like, I'm a novice, what do I know here? But that's an interesting thing where I think as a man, say with my partner, my fiance, I try to be aware of the emotional dynamic and what are we communicating beneath the surface. And it's really interesting, actually, because it's a totally different way to communicate, just kind of by a more subtle, it's almost like Dylan lyrics aren't very specific, but they're communicating some sort of energy, almost like doing that with your actions, kind of painting pictures, but less explicitly. But then I think vice versa would probably apply. But yeah, what else? Sharing your voice. Am I too loud or too quiet? And then, of course, but there is a responsibility to these people we're more intimate with, I think, to help them grow. And so that if you're a real friend, you do need to kind of call them out if they're going down a bad road. Because in a way, then you're losing your friend. And so, you're going to lose your friend. There's two ways to lose a friend. Let them go down a bad road and then they're not the same person anymore, or they're not a person who you can be a friend with. Or you try to wake them up to what you perceive to be bad, and they cast you adrift. They can't take that conversation. Or maybe, you keep the friend and you communicate it and you somehow find a compromise, or you make peace. Maybe you understand that actually it's fine what they're doing. Or maybe they understand, oh no, you're right. Yeah. But yeah. And yeah, we try to help each other. One hand washes the other. And I think we've evolved in tribes and we're social creatures. So it only stands to reason that these opponent processes, that you could call it an opponent process of you got my will and your will, and they're not the exact same, and maybe we disagree. Me and my dad or something talking about some issues. We don't always agree. We agree on many things, but then I'm bringing his errors to his awareness, and he's bringing my errors to my awareness. And we wouldn't really be very motivated to do that to ourselves. It's harder. And so perhaps this is the way it's always been, that the tribe is doing the error correction for the tribe, but the individual can only do it to a limited extent to themselves. And so encouraging relationships where you encourage each other, be like, come on, please be honest. If I'm out of line, please tell me. By the way, if I'm ever out of line, please tell me, everyone. And yeah, So let's see. Then your sufferings, where we, where we're. That's a question of how when do you reach out for help and advice, and there's that line, most men live lives of quiet desperation, or silent desperation, in fact, not just quiet, silent, very quiet indeed. And I'm sure many people do, but I do think, again, that thing of men being less, in general, less keen to express their emotions and less emotional in general. But this can happen to everyone, you know. And, so I think, obviously if you're really having a hard time, it's very good to talk to people. Even if you think it's going to be a bummer to them, where you think, oh, I'm going to drag them down with my negative energy. There could be some truth to that sometimes. Like, there's a time and a place for it. You don't need to always talk about all your problems and just pollute the waters, which some people do, which is unfortunate. The whole victim consciousness thing, and, the woke tragedy Olympics, who can be the most downtrodden rather than who can be, the most triumphant by humbly doing their best to grow and encourage others to grow and not to wither, not to pick a fight with the universe, but to show grace and gratitude for what we have and to make the best of it. But so you can go too far with expressing negativity, obviously, but if you're having a hard time, it's good to share that and let people know. And, if a friend of mine or someone I'm intimate with, or even like a stranger, confesses to me that they're having a hard time, ironically, it makes me feel better, not just because it, by contrast, maybe makes my own suffering smaller. So, there's some other suffering there. Okay, so mine occupies a smaller percentage of the overall suffering of humankind. But also that it focuses me on them and getting out. I think unfortunately, it's kind of embarrassing and shameful, but also totally forgivable and understandable. But it's just a mess, though, is that depression, there's a strong narcissistic element to depression, which is a kind of an unconscious narcissism, I think. And I guess it's not always there, but I think what I mean by that is, like, if you can focus on other people and just stop focusing on you and your story, basically you get outside your ego, and basically there is no depression anymore. Depression is basically a sad story that we tell ourselves. And, there could be some physical things like, your systemic inflammation in the body, maybe from an unhealthy lifestyle, too many carbs or something. And you've got inflammation in the brain, and then that's causing you to have these kind of neurochemistry and associated brain waves and vibrations, etc., which bring on and are then reinforced by negative thought patterns. So that's possible, but it's still thought patterns, and you still have everyone has the ability to step outside of the stream of thinking if they can learn to be quiet and still and conscious, empty of thought, full of. And so, but yeah, I think sharing, if someone shares their pain with me, I feel better, and I'm motivated to try to help them, and I try to lift them up. Then I feel better about myself because I'm the kind of person, I'm helping someone. And it seems that they say the best way to help yourself is help someone else. So you're feeling down, all right, go do something for somebody else, and ironically, then you feel better. Which is the funny thing about, like, if you really want to be selfish, be selfless. That's the real way. The professional way to be selfish is to be selfless, because that's when you realize but there's two things there. There's probably three. Let's assume there's three. I feel like there's three, although I don't know what the third is yet. Not on this level anyway. One is that by helping others, you make yourself feel good. Two is that you are everyone. Like, we're all the same tree. I'm a branch called Jamie, but I'm also part of the bigger branch called the Magloos. I'm part of a bigger branch called the Irish or the Australians, both interesting intermixed branch there. Part of a bigger branch called, human Europeans or humans. Bigger branch which is part on one branch on the tree of mammals, which is on the bigger branch of mammals, which is a branch on the bigger branch of animals, which is part of the animal kingdom, or not the animal kingdom, but just the kingdom of life on Earth, which is part of the cosmos, So I am a branch, but I'm also the tree. And so this is number 2. If you want to be a professional narcissist, if you want to do a proper job of being selfish and helping yourself, when you should realize who you are, that you're not this isolated fragment, you're not just the branch. That's the ego, where you think you're just the branch. But when you realize, okay, I can be the branch, that's the healthy ego. You could call it ego, or you could call it just, Christ. You're living as an individual, but you're aware that you're bigger than that. But you're like, I'm the ocean hanging out as a wave for now. I won't be the wave for very long, but it's fun. Here I am. Look, I'm a wave. I can see it. Am I just a wave? No, I'm the ocean. Which am I more? Which is deeper? Well, I was the ocean before I was the wave, and I'll be the ocean after I was the wave. And even while I'm the wave, I'm the ocean. So, okay, I guess the ocean's a deeper reality, isn't it? Or a more fundamental reality, or higher reality, even though the wave is higher than the ocean. Fair point. Good rebuttal. This is why we need to share voices. And yeah, so yeah, when you realize you're actually everyone. In some sense, we're all part of the one thing. And you could take some psychedelics, and if you've got the right philosophical framework / social framework, where you've got setting, you've got good people around you who you trust and you'll communicate with, and they will help you if you get into some messy, dark vibrations. They will kind of say, "Hey, don't worry about that. Come back, groove this way." And if you're ready for that, not everyone is. That's one way that you can kind of come to direct realization of this, but also through years of study in yoga, or it's a more sustainable way. Though I think maybe combining them might be the most practical. So when you realize you're not just this one person, then if I want to be really selfish, then I actually can't just be helping this one part of me. I don't want to just take care of my left pinky finger. Like, I'm being selfish. I'm just going to take care of my left pinky finger. I won't wash the rest of me. I won't, take care of the rest of it. Like, that's crazy. You're the whole body. If you want to be taking care of yourself properly and being selfish, take care of your whole body. Put your whole body ahead of everyone else, not just your pinky finger ahead of everyone else. So in the same way, you can realize, actually, I think, I want to help this random person I don't even know, because we're all one. We're all connected in some mysterious way we don't really understand. But it's very intriguing and enthusiasmizing. So, yeah, and then 3, what's the third level of being selfish, being selfless, being the right way to be selfish? You tell me. Give me your voice. I don't know. But yeah, and so I think practically, to make it a bit more practical here, like if someone's if I'm in pain, if I have a problem, then just sharing it can help, because it can remove my kind of shame or embarrassment about not feeling happy, being like, and worrying about dragging people down around me. If it's out, then okay, those fears don't really make sense anymore. If the person's like, no worries, you're all right, you're a good buddy, or whatever. Like, okay, cool. It kind of reassures you. So it kind of helps them also, because it's improving the vibrations you're putting out, the ambience, the atmosphere you're kind of creating or contributing to socially. And but then, so admitting your pain can be helpful there. Also, it might trigger them to do the same. But you know what? I've just been pretending to be happy too. I've been having the worst week. I didn't want to tell anyone. I didn't want to drag anyone down. Really? Me too. Oh, what are the odds? Um, and so then that can be good. And then in future, say, even if you don't tell someone the next time you're feeling bad, that thought might just come to you. Oh, remember, all these people around me could be fighting a battle I have no idea about. Like, last week my friend seemed fine, but then I told him my pain and he was like, he admitted he was feeling terrible. I had no idea. Huh. Maybe maybe I'm not so alone in my suffering. Maybe everyone's suffering and just incredible actors, which I think is basically true. And so sharing your pain there can be helpful because it's improving your vibration. That's good for you and others. Also, it's an invitation for others to do the same, which is good for you and them and everyone. Also, it opens the door for feedback and discussion where they can go, hey, what do you think is causing it? Or do you think this is causing it? And it might allow you to generate awareness around it, which could kind of dissolve it or maybe prevent it from coming around as frequently in the future. So that could be good for everyone. Also, and that could be also not just about you, but about what someone else is doing. There's like gossip, I guess, is kind of like that. It's an information flow. Like, this person's doing that. Oh, really? Oh my God. And it gets around, and everyone kind of instinctively kind of treats the person a little bit different. And that person maybe kind of senses it and is like, okay. Or maybe one person who's closer to them is like, hey, everyone's talking about this stuff you're doing. You should be careful. So it's like a kind of less direct confrontation. It's through, word of mouth spreading. But like you could, or kind of so a similar thing, you tell your friend, oh, I'm feeling bad because my Gary did this thing. Oh, really? Then you could talk about it, and even just kind of having that, understanding, being understood could help you get over it. And where Gary can keep doing his thing and you've just got thicker skin, and because you talked about it, you felt understood and heard, and you're all right now. And then Gary can keep doing his thing, and maybe Gary's fine. Maybe you're the one out of balance, but this allows you to have a bit thicker skin and you can give it back to him and, joking around or whatever. Or maybe it's like, yeah, that's not cool what Gary's doing. Oh, yeah, thanks for that. And then that might embolden you to go talk to Gary and go, hey, it's not okay. And if he's like, says who? But, well, look, I was just talking to someone else and they agreed with me. Or even if you don't mention that, say, just give you the confidence to address a problem. Or maybe the other person is like, well, I know you, Jamie, don't have confidence to talk to Gary, but I'm going to go talk to him. This isn't okay. And then, wherever. There's many ways that could go. But you could see it could help address the cause of this pain. Yeah, and I think just in general, opening up and being vulnerable it's a sign of trust, and it helps us bond together, and it's an opportunity for love to flow when you care about people, and it's a way to learn from each other and just learn from these deeper lessons of these deeper dramas that are going on between our ears all over the planet. So everyone learns. But yeah, there is a point. Sometimes it's good if your friends, like, how's things? Maybe things are terrible, but maybe in that moment you're not quite ready to talk about it. Or maybe you've already talked about it recently and you feel like you don't want to indulge in that vibration. You want to focus on what you want. Because, if you focus too much on the problems you're trying to fix, you can focus on that vibration, and then like the law of attraction kicks in and you kind of create those situations because you're focusing on that way of living too much. Or for whatever reason, maybe you just don't feel like it. Or maybe you just want to kind of practice self-control and detachment and surrender. And so they say, yeah, how's things? And you go, things are as they are. Or you go, oh yeah, great, grand, whatever. Or you go, well, I was going to ask you the same thing. I think that's much more important. You're the main character of the universe, aren't you? Ha ha ha. Whatever, just joke around. But so sometimes not expressing your pain can also be healing for you and for others. Or maybe someone else is having a hard time, and you might judge that maybe expressing my pain would be helpful for them, or maybe it wouldn't. Maybe that'll just be too much weight. I'm just gonna present, I'm gonna embody the peaceful platform which they can kind of just crawl onto and kind of start joining in, participating in that energy. And then later on, once my dear associate or whatever is kind of more grounded in good, emotion and vibes, then maybe I could introduce my own suffering. But so it's like a time and place sometimes, and balance, So that's talking about suffering then. Then, so when to be too loud, when to be too quiet. Then there's like, say, your opinions. Like I'm here like yapping all, every week about my opinion to whoever will listen. And so sometimes I wonder like, oh yeah, am I talking, I don't know, like giving my opinion on things. I'll almost always say I'm not totally sure if I don't think I'm sure about it, I try to be very honest and humble. Like, I don't know. Things I know, it's just like the river flowing through, like, this is just my conditioning. Here I am. I'm the soul watching the river of thoughts flow through, and it seems I can kind of conjure up thoughts and create thoughts in some mysterious way as well. But largely it's just kind of coming through, and it reflects, it's just a natural process, reflects my experiences and where I come from and my culture, my family, my own karma or whatever, my own interests or attention. But, I think like, so I give my voice, but sometimes I wonder like, are there certain things where maybe it's better to, just let them be or not talk about them, or I don't know, or and perhaps in the podcast, it's okay, I guess, because the whole idea is like, this is my outlet, so I can just talk like this. And I think I would listen, if I wasn't doing the podcast, I would be listening to it. If someone else was talking like this, I would listen to them because I think it's interesting. But yeah, I guess in other situations, perhaps like there is, I think something I probably want to work on in myself is being more concise in my speech and just kind of fewer words, get to the point, just say it, and not to need to give all the supporting documentation necessarily unless it's requested. Yeah, maybe to be a bit more comfortable with just hanging out and not needing to, satisfy my urge to kind of explore the nature of things through my point of view, through words, and just to allow silence to reign, So that's something I kind of work on with some of my friends, just hanging out and just play music or whatever, and working on, not always just, getting over enthusiastic about certain things and talking too much. Because talking is amazing, sharing your voice is amazing, but silence is, at the end of the day, silence is more beautiful. What's that poem? The Holy Grail? The answer is not to question. The view from the giant's shoulder. Nothing is so beautiful as silence. So that'd be a good place to end. But I believe there might be one more itch to scratch, ironically, or paradoxically. Hope it's a paradox and not just bitter irony of tears. So when we don't express ourselves enough, I guess I kind of talked about that, that you want to share who you are and celebrate who you are. And yeah, okay, good. And discover who you are, like through mistakes. Like I kind of express myself, but then I get a bunch of feedback, even if it's just people looking at me like, really? You think that? Or I say something and whether the feedback's good or it's bad, I get some sort of reaction, and then I can process that and modify myself, It just happens instinctively, but also I can kind of intentionally do Do I want to do this, that? In the way I think and the way I feel and behave and talk and all that, and what I want, what my aims are, and what my ways, my manners are. And so I think, yeah, like having the faith to say, oh, this is the music I like, or, confidence to say, I think this is true. And if you don't agree, that's okay, but this is really what I think. This is really who I am. This is part of this. I believe this. I know that's not me deep down. It comes and goes, like I don't need to defend them with my life because it's not me. It's just an idea. But this is part of me in that I believe this. This is the way I see things right now. And to be honest about that, it allows you to have that humility. If you can have that confidence combined with humility, then you have this beautiful kind of transformation where you can kind of grow and learn, and you're getting better at figuring out what's real. And so if you always kind of just hold back your voice and you're not sure if you can trust yourself, then you won't be able to trust yourself because you're not practicing receiving and integrating feedback from errors. So I think that's important. And with, like, say you're speaking a second language, as a side note, if you're speaking a foreign language, I think you should do the same thing and be really just have confidence but humility and just laugh at yourself. Haha, so I always make mistakes with that. Haha, instead of being frustrated, like, because then you're just wasting energy, and you're not going to want to engage with the language and people and opportunities as much. So, but having that, sharing your voice, but having is a way of kind of improving your voice. It's like singing. The more you sing, the better you get, and that goes for particular songs as well. Like this, I was thinking recently, there's some songs where I was like, oh, I can't sing that very well, but I just love singing them. So I kept singing them. And then I've noticed, like, oh, actually just instinctively, I kind of know I'm doing them really well. Like, and it's just by pure practice. And then that's been kind of liberating to think when I'm learning new songs now, like I can just sing it any old way. And just, if it's not perfect, doesn't matter. Just do it. Because, I'm kind of building in that groove, like a river going through a canyon and carving into the rocks, a groove. It just kind of begins to flow where it should. So, and finally, let's see, sharing your voice with yourself. I think self-honesty is incredibly important, and telling ourselves, who we are and what's up. And of course, like the ultimate honesty is silence, because that's the ultimate, whether you're speaking or you're not, to be awake, it needs to be coming from silence. There needs to be silence, at least in the background. Or it could just be the background and the foreground. It could be everything if you're not thinking. But I think, and that regenerates your voice. When you can connect to silence, then your voice is clearer and wiser and more grounded, it would seem. But with oneself, I think, when people, as I was just thinking recently, I was giving someone this advice, and then I was like, I should follow that advice too. And so I'm doing my best to do that now, which is that, when people disappoint us, or they don't do things the way we think they should, or maybe it surprises us. It could be a small little traumatic kind of shock of like, oh my God, how could they do that? Or how could this happen? Anything where people or events don't go the way you want them to, or don't do what you want them to, then I think the wise response is to just accept and do this ahead of time. For sure, someone's going to do something to you soon, or something's going to happen to you soon, which you're not going to like, and it's going to make you spiral into negative emotion. That's guaranteed. Unless you're enlightened listening to this, unless you're an awakened being. If so, then namaste, great soul. But otherwise, yeah, for sure, there's some negative thing coming up, which is going to take away your self-control and take you to a place of emotion you don't actually want to be in, of resisting the inevitability of the present moment, the way it already is. So I think the wise answer is just to accept everything that is, and ahead of time too. Go, all right, look, people are going to do something, and someone's going to do something, and it's going to be really annoying. But ahead of time, right now, I accept that. I'm going to go, perfect. It's exactly what I wanted. I'm glad my friend stole my money and turns out wasn't actually a friend. Like, well, realistically, it'll be hard to say, like, I'm glad, although it might work for you to go so extreme just to help you build in that habit. But like, probably the more likely way would be to go, you accept it. Go, well, okay, that's what's happened. So that's what I want. Because I want to be in alignment with the universe. As Epictetus says, you can say to yourself in this kind of situation, Epictetus, the Roman philosopher, Stoic philosopher, you can say, this is the price I pay for my state of inner serenity. Or like, accepting this is the price I pay for my state of inner serenity. And so, that's pretty beautiful. And yeah, so you accept it, okay. Offer no resistance, basically. Okay. And Jocko Willink, his way of doing this, the Extreme Ownership, the guy who wrote Extreme Ownership, Navy SEAL, is good. Just say good after everything. Like, Jocko, our boys over, or maybe it wouldn't be like that, but like, the command say they can't send the supplies until next weekend. Something that was some problem for them. You'd be like, good. And then just as it focuses him on accepting things and moving into, okay, great, now how do we work with this? So it's very pragmatic, extreme ownership. Just take ownership, say, no, I'm not going to put responsibility on anyone else because I'm giving away my own power. No, I'm going to say, okay, perfect, and then just stay focused on what can I do, and just keep focused on your responsibility, what you can do to improve things. So step 1, accept, okay, yeah, this is what's happened. And then step 2 is communicate. They're the only steps. Step 1, accept. Step 2, communicate. And step 2, by communicate, it means with yourself, but then possibly also you might decide with others, including the person who's causing the problem, as you see it. Perhaps, or sometimes you might decide, no, it's better to not actually communicate in this case. But so step 1, you accept the situation. Step 2, communicate. That means tell yourself in your mind, tell yourself what you, how you were feeling and what you were thinking and why. So, okay, I'm kind of feeling, how am I feeling? I'm kind of feeling embarrassed. Is that what I'm kind of feeling angry. Oh my God. I'm kind of feeling, what is that feeling? I'm feeling ashamed. Oh, okay. And then what am I thinking? Or you might try to understand them and go, okay, well, I guess maybe I'm feeling like I should have seen this coming, and okay, or I'm feeling like, that person, I feel bad for that person, kind of, okay, whatever. Just what are your feelings and what thoughts are you having? I'm having this thought like, I always do this, or whatever it is, So just be clear on what you're feeling and what you're thinking and why, where is it coming from? And that's it. So you accepted it, and then step 2, you just communicated with yourself and generated awareness. So then you're not emotionally divided, like, maybe I want to like my friend, but my friend's done this thing, and so I kind of hate my friend right now, but no, I don't. Or do I? I don't even know what I think. Who am I? Oh my God, that's so shameful. I don't know what I think. Instead of having all this probably unconscious chaos in you, you clarify it and you go, okay, what do I think? What am I thinking right now? Okay, and what am I feeling and why? Okay. Just get it all in perspective. That itself will help to accept things and also just help to dissolve that energy which you've accepted of, being disappointed or being angry or whatever it is. And then often you'll probably feel like, I should communicate a little bit to this other person. And it might be just a joke where you go, Ah, again, huh? You're, you're. It's like a bad sequel to a Hollywood movie. Ha ha. Make some stupid joke where they go, ha, yeah. But somewhere in their mind, there's a seed of like, again, true. I did that before, didn't I? Mm, they made a joke about it though. Were they unhappy? They didn't look unhappy. Hmm. But at least there's a seed there, So you might plant a little seed like that, or you might be more direct and say, hey, I really feel very uncomfortable saying this, but actually I think I need to. I kind of feel like you're not really respecting me when you do that, or whatever it is, that might be necessary. And then they can go, what are you talking about? Or they get angry, or, whether they take it in a good, loving way or in a kind of bad way where they kind of show a lack of concern and respect for you, then either way, now either it's going to improve your life, because either you're going to improve that friendship and bring it into balance, or whatever relationship it is, or you will, and even if it's like some bureaucracy doing something, or a company, and you give them a bit of peace of your mind, if you do it in a respectful way where you're not you're not making it easy for them you're not, pushing them into a corner where they have to get crazy at you, but you're just respectfully communicating, then either they will, it'll improve that relationship, because they'll take on board your criticism, your feedback, or else they'll explain to you why you're wrong and you'll learn from that. Or if they take it badly, then you realize, okay, I don't want anything to do with this person or organization or whatever it is, and fine, and then good. Now I know that. Imagine if I hadn't had this argument, I wouldn't have known that I was still associating with some person or people that I really shouldn't have been. So you can be grateful for it. Okay. So it's all perfect. And so communication can be helpful. And if you don't communicate about small things as they happen, the energy might bottle up and then explode in some irrational kind of fury, disproportionate to the situation. And you're going to start bringing in these old things, and the other person might feel like, well, you've just been carrying this around. That's not very cool. You've just been feeling bad about me the whole time. That's kind of betraying my trust. You should have been more honest, And so, and just, be hard to have a more civil, clear conversation, respectfully, to work towards, a common understanding if you've bottled it up. So it's better to kind of deal with it as it comes. Just like if you've got a task to work on and it's a bit overwhelming, you can chop it up into smaller pieces and work on them one by one, and then you can get the task done. Quote, "The man who moves a mountain begins by taking away small stones." Close quote. But then in a similar way to that, by keeping these conflicts and misunderstandings and, standing on each other's feet while you're dancing the dance of relationship, keeping it small, addressing it when it's come up, then you're better able to kind of deal with these things and digest them together without it getting too messy. But so that's situations where, you've accepted it, and then you communicate with yourself, and then you decide, actually, I should communicate with this person or some other person or whatever. But then there's other situations where you'll go, okay, I've accepted it, I've communicated with myself, so now I know what's going on and what I feel, and I believe I'm in the right, or maybe actually no, I realize I'm a bit in the wrong with this thing, but they're in the wrong about that thing. Whatever it is, you get clear on what's, from your point of view, as far as you can tell, what is real and what is right. What's true and false, and right and wrong. So yeah, you can get clear on that, and then you might go, that's enough. I'm fine. That's good. That's all I need. Or you might go, I'll go like that for now, and if it happens again, I'll communicate with them. So I'd say, am I too loud or am I too quiet? I guess at the end of the day, how do you feel? If you don't feel good, especially in the moment that there's something of relevance coming up, if you don't feel good, then that's like the guide rails or the guideline thing on the side of the road saying like, oh, you're veering off the path, Discomfort is like, something's going on, Some types of discomfort can mean you need to change your diet or sleep more or whatever, like me probably. But other types, they are like, oh, there's something you need to communicate about, at least with yourself, possibly with others. And then communication can bring consciousness, which can bring change, action. So, yeah, that would be my thoughts on voice and being too loud or too quiet. And if you have any thoughts, if you want to share your voice, please send me a message on social media, Rendezvous with Jamie McGlue, or put a comment to this video or audio, whatever. If you, can you put comments on audio? I don't know if you can, but I'm on YouTube anyway. And yeah, let me know if you ever have things you want to talk about. If you have a question, if it's interesting enough, I'll like just do a whole podcast on it, So, or if there's something I talked about and you felt like it wasn't really clear, send me a question. I'll be happy to clarify or whatever. So I do enjoy sharing my voice, and it's not just like knowing that other people can hear me and understand me, and I can be existing in your world. Much more than that. Actually, it's like that's the icing on the cake, but the cake itself is just myself and just knowing my voice and knowing who I am. And I think expressing yourself and learning to have a voice and what do I think about these things, and I think that's a very joyful thing. It kind of introduces you to a deeper, very deep kind of part of yourself. And then you can go even deeper by shutting up at the end. So much love, everyone, and enjoy singing your song.